It's FYF Sports, man. It's Lamont, man. We back with another podcast video, man. Today we got some interesting information out of the NBA. But before we get started with the story, make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell to the video if you haven't done so already. We appreciate all the engagement that you guys have given us so far on our grind to 20K subscribers. Heading into this, the latter part of the year. But today, this guy Kyrie Irving finds himself back in the news once again. He's back in the news once again, and as usual for the wrong reasons. Now, what we do know is, just not too long ago, about a week ago, Kyrie Irving made some comments about LeBron James indirectly, stating that he's never played with a player who could take that last minute shot, who could make that specific shot when the time called. A lot of people insinuated that his comments were aimed at LeBron James. Now, we know that LeBron James has struggled in the clutch in his career, but for the most part, he still had a pretty dominant career aside from some faults in the clutch. But a lot of people felt that his comments were really, really aimed and based out of jealousy. Even though Kyrie Irving was having success in Cleveland with LeBron James, Kyrie Irving wanted out. Kyrie Irving wanted to do his own thing. Kyrie Irving wanted to go to Boston and try to lead his own team. He went to Boston. Things did not work out the way he planned. He even admitted that trying to lead his own team, trying to be that guy, it's a lot harder than he expected it to be. He even reached out to LeBron James and apologized directly. I think those comments right there, we all know that they were aimed at LeBron James. I think they were based out of jealousy. I think Kyrie is, he's been an oddball character, to say the least, since he's been in the NBA. He's definitely a great player, but I think some of I just think some of the he's starting to be that player that's getting in the way of himself with his attitude. I think he's a bit selfish, and his approach to the game, it excludes his teammates, and it's not inclusive to a winning environment. And we've seen that as he's left and went out on his own, he hasn't really won. His teams haven't really found a lot of success, and in some cases, like with Boston, that team has kind of gotten better without him. But today, again, we got a clip right here. Kyrie Irving's back in the news once again. You guys can see the statement right there. He recently made a statement on the Kevin Durant podcast. I don't see us having a head coach. Now, again, I didn't hear the podcast. I heard snippets of it, so I didn't hear the entire podcast. I want to hope that I'm not taking this out of context. But what I want to do is I want to play this clip. I do want to hear Stephen A. Smith's reaction to this clip. Once we hear his reaction and some of the panel, we're just gonna, we're gonna chop it up. We're gonna talk about it, and then I also want your guys' feedback in the comment section on what you think about this particular issue, because I think it's a very, very, I think it's a damning statement. I think it's just a statement of that's gonna kind of foretell things to come. And when you have one of your best players making a statement like this, I think things can really only go down here for you. I don't think this is a championship roster when you have one of your best players making a statement. That's my opinion, but let's go ahead and hear what Stephen A. Smith has to say.
Need a coach? Tell me a player in the history of sports that never needed coaching. Now, Bill Russell ultimately became a player coach, and we understand that. Prior to that, he had Red Auerbach. Michael Jordan didn't even want to play for anybody other than Phil Jackson. And then even when he became a minority owner or was scheduled, he was the president of basketball operations and was looking for an ownership stake in the Washington Wizards franchise. If you recall, he hired Doug Collins. Why? Because you kind of need a coach. Even though you were his boss, you still recognize that you needed a coach to coach the team, because if you're playing on the court, you can't just watch everything. Kobe and Shaq needed a coach. KG needed a coach. Ray Allen needed a coach. Paul Pierce needed a coach. Steve Kerr's coaching in Golden State. Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, and them didn't need a coach. I don't know if I've heard anybody say something so ignorant. As a basketball player, you don't need a coach? We really don't need a coach? Not to mention the fact that even though I have made my positions clear about a coach with no resume whatsoever getting that job, you still don't undermine them by saying, well, yeah, we don't really need them. We don't need somebody just telling us, trying to change the wheels. Well, you might, depending on what you're doing and who you're going up against. That's what a coach is for. I mean, you know what, Max? KP, I want to limit my comments to that because I'm scared of what else I'm going to say.
Stephen A., it's pretty good to pull a Max Kellerman. See that? You get to say what you're really thinking. Let me tell you something. I want to connect the two comments that Kyrie made with one theme. First, telling KD about the LeBron thing. At the end of the game, and every team I've ever been on, I'm the one who wants to take the last shot. Now you can too. That's ego protection. Everything Kyrie says is, no one is the boss of me, right? In other words, LeBron's not the boss of me. He wasn't better than me. But KD, who's more of a peer, we're co-partners, we're equals, we're on this team together. This is our team. Steve Nash is now the head coach, but he's not really our head coach, right? Steve Nash is not the boss of me. I could be the head coach one day. You can be. It's just we can coexist. No, Kyrie, he's the coach. You're the player, and you're not the best player on the team. And at the end of the game, you're not the best player on the team. KD's better than you, and Steve Nash is your coach. That's how it is. By the way, I want to know when LeBron made the comments he made, talking about why the Lakers work. He and AD, there's no jealousy. People know their roles. Did that comment come after what Kyrie said about he's always the one who wanted to take the last shot until now with KD? Is LeBron responding without mentioning Kyrie's name to what Kyrie said? I want to know the timestamp on those comments, because LeBron's right. Not only is Kyrie wrong about his comments, and he's kind of started this, but if LeBron is responding, he's right. It's working with AD because there's not jealousy and jockeying for position and people not knowing their roles. Kyrie got to look in the mirror on this one.
Hey, man, there we have it right there, man. We just heard from Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman, both on this particular situation with Kyrie Irving. And I think Max Kellerman hit it right on the head, y'all. I think Max Kellerman hit it right on the head when he said that, when Max Kellerman stated that this was about ego with Kyrie Irving, that's exactly what it is. And when we look back at Kyrie Irving when he's in Cleveland, look at the situation he was in. He was in a winning situation. He was in a championship situation. And he was also in a championship situation where he wasn't really looked at as the Robin. He was looked at as a 1A and 1B because he was the one that stepped up in the NBA Finals. He was the one that made the tough clutch shot over Steph Curry. He was the savior that particular year. He got a lot of credit. I mean, when you're playing alongside a player like LeBron James, it's obvious that a lot of the media attention is going to be focused on LeBron. That's what just comes with being the best player in the NBA, especially at that particular time, coming off of a championship. And so based on a lot of the things that Kyrie Irving has done in the past, I think he's been really, really manipulative with the media. Not just on the court, but even off the court as well. And a lot of people might disagree with this, but when you look back on how he left Cleveland and the reasons why he left Cleveland, saying that he wanted to lead his own team. He had the opportunity to lead his own team in Boston, and he failed miserably. Boston did not want to re-sign him. Boston didn't want him back. Now he's in the Nets, on the Brooklyn Nets. Even when he got to the Brooklyn Nets and when he was healthy, we heard inclinations of issues within that locker room. Kyrie Irving being separate from the other guys, and we know that Brooklyn team is a close-knit group. We see, when the pandemic struck, Kyrie was the one to kind of step out in front of this as a voice of the players. And when the players needed him most, he kind of shied away and disappeared into the shadows. A lot of players behind the scenes spoke about that. Whether you want to admit it or not, these are the things that are true. I think he's ego-driven. He wants to be the guy in that spotlight, but he doesn't want to accept the responsibility and criticism that comes with it. He didn't want to accept the responsibility and criticism that came with being the best player in Boston. He's put himself in a situation in Brooklyn where he's not going to have to accept the responsibility and criticism because he's not even the best player in Brooklyn. He's definitely, the Robin to Kevin Durant. We know who the alpha on that team is going to be. We know who the go-to guy in all crucial moments is going to be on that particular team. It's not going to be Kyrie Irving. And so I think it's just really irresponsible, just like Max Kellerman and Stephen A. Smith said, just to say, I don't really see us having a coach. Again, the way basketball operates, there's a reason why you have recreational basketball, but then you have organized basketball. Organized basketball is much more efficient and usually wins out most of the time because it's structured, right? You have coaches, you have players. And then at the professional level, you have GMs and front office guys, you have coaches, you have players. And that's just how it works. And that structure right there is what keeps things balanced. And when you get to the level, when you get to that NBA level, it's not necessarily about teaching guys X's and O's. Most guys know everything they need to know about the game of basketball by the time they get to the professional level. But head coaches in the NBA, what they need, their primary job is to reel egos in, give players roles, and put each player in a winning situation. I mean, the best example of that is with Phil Jackson when he came to the Bulls. Phil Jackson inherited the best player in the game at that particular time. But even though Michael Jordan was the best player in the game, Michael Jordan still had flaws. He had to be reeled in. And he needed a great coach to help him understand that. What did Phil Jackson help Michael Jordan understand? Phil Jackson essentially helps Michael Jordan understand that the only way you're going to win in this league is if you allow your teammates to do their jobs. And they can only do their jobs if you start moving the ball. You have to do less offensively and allow them to do their jobs for us to have team success. And when Jordan realized that, when that philosophy started to work, and when a lot of the other philosophies in the culture that Phil Jackson was starting to instill into that Bulls team started to work, even Michael Jordan himself saw that having a great coach mattered. When we saw Phil Jackson take over that Laker team with Shaq and Kobe. Shaq and Kobe hadn't won any championships prior to Phil Jackson getting there. What did Phil Jackson have to do when he got there? He implemented his culture, his philosophy. He assigned roles with Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal. One great way to break that down is as they were headed into the NBA Finals or in NBA playoffs, Phil Jackson understood that Kobe was going to be that guy to carry him through the playoffs. When they got to the finals, Shaq was going to be that guy to finish him off. When your two best players understand their roles, it makes that much easier. Now we know that towards the end of that run, egos blew that whole relationship up. That was all about egos. Who wanted to be the man? Who was going to step down and be the second guy? We know that Shaq was getting older. He wasn't really ready to relinquish that role. And again, egos is what blows up most teams. Egos is usually what gets in the way of championships. When we look at the potential championship roster that the Los Angeles Lakers had when they had Karl Malone and Gary Payton on the roster, along with Shaq and Kobe, that team was favored heavily against the Detroit Pistons in the NBA Finals. Why did they lose? Internal beef, egos. It wasn't that this team, Pistons, were better. The Pistons were not the better team. The Lakers beat themselves because of egos. And my problem with Kyrie Irving, my main problem with Kyrie Irving is that one thing that's never failed in the game of basketball, one thing that always comes to light is that bad attitudes, bad culture, and egos will always amount to losing. It will always amount to losing basketball, and it's never been proven wrong. Bad attitudes, bad egos, bad culture, all right, it will always amount to losing. And that's followed Kyrie Irving ever since he left Cleveland. His ego wasn't able to supersede what LeBron was able to do with that team. so he couldn't really put that losing mentality on the Cleveland Cavaliers. But it has spread like a disease into the Nets locker room. It has spread like a disease, or did spread like a disease into that Celtics locker room. And a lot of people who just don't want to accept it, all you have to do is sit back and wait. All you have to do is sit back and wait. For as great of a player that he is, he's starting to get in his own way. And that's what the problem with Kyrie Irving. A great player, he's getting in his own way because of his ego. He's ego-driven, and it's just sad that it looks as if he can potentially throw away his own career. It looks as if he could put himself in a situation where he will never win another championship because of his own ego. And this is going to be the true test this year. Because, again, the one thing, even when Kyrie Irving's been placed in great situations, he was in a great situation in Cleveland, his ego got in his own way. I'm waiting, and I know it will happen. I'm waiting for this situation to implode in his face. It's going to implode again. It's just a matter of when. Because when you have somebody with this type of ego, and he's already saying some of the things that he's saying, the statement that he made about LeBron, the statement that he's now making about coaching, these are all ego-driven things. They're gonna blow this team up, and they're gonna get defeated. And it's just sad. His ego led him to creating a locker room of distrust in Brooklyn. This is why Kenny Atkinson was fired. This is why Kenny Atkinson was fired mid-season, because of a guy like Kyrie Irving being toxic in the locker room. And Kenny Atkinson was a good coach. Nobody can say he was doing a bad job down there. He was doing a great job in Brooklyn. Finds himself out of the league now because of a toxic player. It's just going to spread like wildfire, you guys. And that's just how it is, especially when it's coming from one of your top players. But you guys, let me know what you think about this subject. Let me know what you think about Kyrie Irving. We're probably going to be talking about this over our next couple of live streams, man, because I really want to dive deeper into this. And I just think, man, I just think it's sad. For as great of a player he is, he's just starting to get in his own way. And I don't see this man winning another NBA championship until he can get over himself. But again, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell to the video if you have not done so already. Grind to 20K. Hopefully we can get there before the end of this month. We're going to keep putting out this content. We've already started the live streams. We had a great live stream yesterday. I think we got to about 1,300 viewers was, I think, our max count. And again, I appreciate everybody for taking time out of your day, jumping into that live stream, participating in the chat, liking the video. I mean, we appreciate all of that engagement. That's what's helping the channel grow. Make sure you're joining our Facebook group. And when we have these live debates, again, the only way you're eligible for the cash prizes is if you join our Facebook group, NBA Gold Talk. So make sure you go over to Facebook and join that group as well. But other than that, it's been a great podcast video. We'll be back soon with more sports and news. But it's FYF Sports, and we're out.